Hello, virtual educators. It's Kelly Alston, and in this video, I'm going to walk you through how I create my units based on student learning outcomes. Now, again, if you decide that you do not want to do units and you would rather just do individual sessions, that's fine. That's what you can do. However, the way that I have taught this is that I have created units within my course, and basically the LTVD has been the student assessment, which is an integral part of each instructional segment of my course. It has become the primary focus in the courses where I use this particular framework. And so because it is that formative assessment for me, I look at my outcomes because we have so many. I mean, look at this particular course. I copied and pasted these. There are 12 learning outcomes to cover in a semester. And you may be on mini semesters, we call it. You may be on 8-week sessions, or you might be in summer school, or you might be, well, summer school, this definitely wouldn't work for summer school. We don't have synchronous sessions in summer school. But during the year, I don't know how long your sessions are going to be, but mine are 16 weeks. So I'm able to, and I love the semester uh, um, layout, if you will, for higher education, particularly with teacher ed, because I believe that the students need the time that it takes to dig deep into the course to really understand concepts and be able to apply concepts not only when they're student teaching, but when they have their own classroom. So I create units. That's what that was all about. Now, so what I'm going to show you is that I have these 12 learning outcomes. Yours might be objectives, however they call them at your university. It's what your students should be able to do when they leave the course, right? What you want them to master, what you want them to know, to be able to explain, to be able to do, the skill set that you want to be enhanced and developed by the end of the course. And so we have 12 of them, okay? So in order to create a unit, I'm going to show you, I'm just going to pull out this one right here, this particular outcome right here. I'm going to highlight it for you. Ooh, that's so bright. Let's just do this orange. Okay. And so this particular outcome says communicate effectively with parents and other professionals the results of the naturalistic observations and or screening and assessment batteries and the implication for decision making and instructional planning. So let me just tell you now, when I create these units, I they've changed over the years a little, just depending on updating the content, or just a different perspective or a different set of outcomes that I want to highlight in the unit. But let me tell you, once you create this unit, unless there is some drastic change, for example, your textbook changes and the chapters change or something like that, this is done, and it is done and repeated over and over again. So it's going to take you some time to create it, is what I'm trying to say. It took me a couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, to create the units for the courses where I implement the LTVD, because I had to research articles and actually read the articles and determine whether or not they were good articles for undergraduates to read, and determine whether or not they were written well, and whether or not they conveyed the message that I wanted them to learn. So it took some time, but let me tell you, it is so worth it. Okay, so let's just start here where I chose this particular outcome that I want to focus on, because I say to myself, this is something that you just don't learn from reading a chapter. How to effectively communicate with parents and other professionals the results of the naturalistic observations and or screening and assessment batteries and the implication for decision making and instructional planning. Whew, that's a mouthful. So what do I do? Well, I came down here to show you my thought process. So I take the outcome and I put it here. And I say to myself, what do I want the students to know? What do I want them to be able to do? And I just look at this and kind of unpack this outcome, and I say, okay, I want them to know how to document observations within naturalistic settings. Okay, they have to know how to actually observe children and document their observations. I want them to know how to interpret screening and assessment batteries. Okay, screening and assessment batteries. I want them to know how to plan instruction, because it says, and the implication for decision making and instructional planning. So the reason why I'm doing these observations and the reason why I'm doing these screenings and assessments is so that it can impact my instruction and determine the decisions that I make as to how I intervene instructionally, right? So I want them to also know how to plan instruction based on the results of the screening and assessment batteries. Then I want them to know how to communicate effectively with parents and other professionals the results and the plans for instructional intervention. Okay, so what I'm going to do then is first I'm going to look through the textbook, okay, because we use textbooks at my university for our courses, and of course you have the option not to, but I use textbooks, and I think everyone in my department uses textbooks for every course. So the textbook is Assessing Young Children by Gail Mines and Leanne Jung. So first thing I do is look through the textbook to see which chapters relate to these particular outcomes, these objectives that I've listed here. Okay, so I found that in the textbook, let me scroll down to this part, that chapter 6 is about assessment for planning intervention. And I comb through there and I see, oh wow, they're going to be talking about the role of assessment for planning intervention, challenging behaviors, functional behavior assessment. It's going to be talking about using the FBA to design intervention, assessment for referral, child find studies. It's going to be talking about RTI, which is response to intervention. It's going to be talking about the play-based assessment, dynamic assessment, strengths-based assessment and intervention. So this is a really good textbook, by the way. Task analysis. It's going to go through all of these things in detail in this chapter. Assessing English learners. So quite a bit is covered in chapter 6. Then I see that chapter 7 is about conferencing, and that's communicating the assessments and the screenings to parents. Chapter 7 is about conferencing, grading, and reporting. I see reporting is not spelled correctly here. Okay, so I'm going to say, wow, these two chapters, doesn't matter, the order that they're in, these two chapters relate to what I need them to discuss. I really want them to get into a deep discussion about these two chapters, so I'm going to put them in this unit. Now, I have this as unit 2 because I would not put this as my first unit in an assessment and evaluation class. There are some other things that they need to learn as it relates to these outcomes that I would want them to do before this. For example, I would want them to know how to observe, document, analyze, and utilize data gathered from and about children engaged in real, concrete, play-oriented activities in their own daily learning environments. Now you can see how what I just explained to you that's in chapter 6 relates to this particular outcome as well. But I would want to pull this outcome aside and do that as a separate unit where they could read more about observations. As a matter of fact, there's a textbook chapter called Observation as the Key Method in the System, and that's chapter 3. So I would, if I were going to do my first unit, I would include chapter 3 in this particular unit. Okay, but this unit here on communicating what they've learned how to do here would be my unit number 2. And hopefully I'm not talking too fast, and that made sense. So for this unit number 2, I've already found 2 sources from the textbook. That's chapter 6 and chapter 7. Now I'm going to go to my database at my university and I'm going to look for articles. And let's pretend you spent time looking for articles. You might go through 25, 30 articles. I'm going to tell you, I probably went through uh, at least to create my 3 units, probably 100 articles. Scanning, reading the abstracts, the quick way to do that. Read your abstracts, read the conclusions, look at how it's laid out. I look at the font size. I look at all of this because these are undergraduates, okay, that I'm working with, and that you're hopefully using this framework with. So I look at all of that. And so upon doing all of that, I found these 2 articles, Developing Family Partnerships and Assessment. Well, looky here. This article is by the author of our textbook, Gail Mines. She wrote this article in 2007. And I like for my students to have resources from different years. Some people get caught up in, don't use anything that's 10 years or more. That's not true. It depends on what your goal is. For my language and literacy course, we begin with them reading an article from 1970 about language acquisition, because I want them to see, what was the discussion then about language acquisition. And then our textbook is like a 2017 publication. What are they saying now about language acquisition? Have things changed? Are there different theories? Are there more theories? Do those theories still have a lot of stock when it comes to child development and early childhood education and psychology? So I have to expose them to articles that are from years past, and also to very current articles. So and hopefully, if you do what you're supposed to, your textbook is supposed to be the latest version. Okay, so this textbook was published in 2015. All right, so the article that I found for them is Developing Family Partnerships and Assessment, and another article I found with them is Involving Parents in Early Childhood Assessment, Perspectives from an Early Intervention Teacher. This is from 2002. I usually put the page number, so let's say, for example, because this is just planning, right? So let's say, for example, this article is 15 pages, okay? So you just make that, kind of lets you know the length. Kind of, you can kind of gauge how much time it might take them, but then again, you can't, because this is unit 2. They should be able to go through it faster, but every group is different. But by this point, they should be able to get through a 15-page article in their discussion with no problem. They definitely can do an 8-page one by unit 2. All right, so we have 4 sources for unit 2. Okay, now then I will look at, well, since we spent so much time on this unit, what is an independent assignment, which I call a student activity, that they can do? And in this course, I have them to assess preschool and kindergarten writing samples, and then they create instructional plans based on the results of those samples. They record a mock conference with the parent in which they share the results of the assessment and explain the instructional intervention. They also include activities that parents can do at home to support growth in the necessary areas. So I get to see whether or not they have mastered this. I get to see the application of this, because they are actually conducting a parent-teacher conference about an assessment of students' writing, and they're actually communicating the results of the assessment and what their instructional intervention is going to be. And they're also able to tell the parents how they can support them. So, from this amazing experience of talking about this in such detail, the chapters in the textbook and these 2 articles, these students now are going to be able to conduct a writing assessment, and to take a writing sample and to assess that sample, and to provide instructional strategies, or to determine instructional strategies and communicate that to the parents. So now let's look back up at this outcome. Communicate effectively with parents and other professionals the results of the naturalistic observations and or screening and assessment batteries, and the implication for decision making and instructional planning. So there you have the secret to how I create my units, my thematic units, for my outcomes. Now, if you want to learn more about this and you want extensive training on this, then you'll have to take the LTVD Super course. But I did want you to know, now that I know all these information and I know all this information, the steps, what do I do with it? Now, of course, if you don't want to do these as units, because this is what happens. I create this document and this is what is uploaded on my course shell and also communicated on the syllabus. So session 1 of this unit, and then I would learn through virtual discussion. I would make this, let me change this because this unit, and I said this was going to be unit number 2. Okay, so what I would do is I would have assigned readings, and when students go over to the course and they click on unit 1, this information would be there and the articles would be uploaded there, and of course they access this to their textbook. All right, so chapter 1, it would say session 1, chapter 2. Oh, this is in chapter 2. Let me change that. I was just noticed that was, this should say article, okay, developing family partnerships and assessment. And then session 2, they're going to read this article. And then session 3, they're going to do the textbook. And session 4, they're going to do the textbook. Okay, and I chose to put textbook instead of chapter right here, but textbook chapter 6, textbook chapter 7. So they're going to have 4 sessions in unit number 2, and this document would be included under the unit folder for the LTVD. Let me see if I can show you really quickly what I mean by that. So I would have here LTVD activities on my course, okay? And then this is the independent study unit that they're going to do at the beginning of the semester. Under unit 1 right here is where I'm saying I would include this document. So I would upload this document here. You can do file, you can or you can just do you can do item, or you can explain, but I browse my computer here, add the document, and then click submit. Okay, so that is the science behind creating a thematic unit. Up here I would have the course, FCSC 3640 is what this course is at my university. I would have that up here. OL, what is it, 01 D for distance learning would be the actual number that I would have up there, the section number. And then I have the outcome up here at the top, the student learning outcome, because remember, when they're doing the 8 steps of the LTVD, when they get to step number 7 and they're evaluating the author's presentation, usefulness is one of these sections that they have to determine whether or not this article related to this outcome and how. They have to tell you how. So when they read developing family partnerships and assessment, how did it make this outcome come to light? They have to share that for usefulness in their evaluation of the author's presentation. So I hope this video has been helpful. If you need more help, if you have more questions about this, please don't be afraid to post in the comment section below, or to head over to Facebook to ask me questions. When you ask questions, that lets me know what kind of videos I need to create. It lets me know what kind of live sessions I need to have. I could have in Facebook Live to address this. So please make sure that you share your questions, your comments, your concerns, so that I can address those, because I may not have thought of them, but I may know the answer to them from having done this for 14 years. All right, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.